VIMBAISHE MUSVABURI was only 6 years old when she was raped and molested by more than one man. This life-changing ordeal inspired her to become an activist in hopes to help other women overcome similar ordeals, as well as inspire the people in her country to transform their situation. She now owns the Parliamentarian magazine and has also launched the African Parliamentarian Awards, the first of its kind in Africa. Connect with us online and let us know what you would like to ask VIMBAISHE. Any questions, remember to use the hashtag Afternoon Express in all of your comments. Congratulations, girl. You are trailblazing, being the first to do so many in our country. But
Precisely.
It's quite interesting. Your online bio reads, a 15-year journey to becoming president. How along are you in this journey?
I think I've done 2 years already.
Wow.
I'm possibly going to do another 13 years. But may I say that, yes, I'm going to be president. But hello, presidents in Zimbabwe. Don't worry, I'm not a threat yet. I'm just working on it.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
I'm sure you are under no threat indeed, but you are a powerhouse, and
Precisely.
a powerhouse that we can all look up to and celebrate.
Yeah.
You have decided to stand firm in who you are and be a pioneer. Be the first, and the first of its kind. You've created the Parliamentarian magazine, and you've also founded the African Parliamentarian Awards. Tell us about both initiatives and what they serve to do.
Okay, so in the last elections in Zimbabwe, I ran for a parliamentarian seat. I didn't make it. However, that didn't stop me. During my campaign, I realized that members of parliament or members of the House of Assemblies are not quite understood from their own personal perspectives. Yeah. And I then understood that both the MPs and the people need a gap. They need to bridge a gap where they get to understand each other and control or manage expectations. Hence, I realized that the parliamentarians themselves, not in Zimbabwe, but in Africa, need to be understood in that way. So I created the platform, the Parliamentarian magazine, which is already on the 3rd issue, and we're concentrating on Rwanda and South Africa already.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Stunning. And the Parliamentarian Awards?
So the Parliamentarian Awards were birthed by the Parliamentarian magazine simply because the parliamentarians work hard and they only have normally 5 years to show and to work so hard.
Yes.
And then in the 5 years, they have worked, but most of the time they're like, no, we haven't seen anything because nobody has recognized them. So here it is. Parliamentarians in Africa, they champion certain things. They champion the voice for the girl child. They champion urbanization. They champion the 4IR generation.
Yes.
So there is a lot of things that they champion and they need to be awarded. The 5 years need to make sense to them and needs to make sense to the African people.
Absolutely.
And also, just to add that, we've got a category there that is called the presidential champion. There are presidents in Africa who are doing extremely well and they need to be awarded as well. Yes, and we pioneered that.
I think that's so beautiful because a lot of the time politicians get a bad rep.
Yeah.
It's always negative. It's always misconstrued in a way that doesn't leave a sweet taste in one's mouth. But you're changing the narrative. You're changing
Precisely.
the dialogue and you're celebrating them, uplifting them in order to inspire everyone else that comes after.
Precisely. It also gives a chance for especially women.
Yes.
For women and young people to see that politics is not only sour. You got to come to a point where you look at your leaders and know they are the change that are waiting in your nation. And you need to be that as well. I mean, where's the time where young people can say, oh, yeah, I want to be president when I grow up. For sure, I want to lead the people of Zimbabwe. I want to be the first female president in Zimbabwe, and I'm going to do it. Yeah. And without showing some sort of initiative and changing the narrative, young people are not going to be able to do that.
Well, you're definitely on the right path. You're now an advocate for gender, rape, and just standing up and saying, hey, I haven't come from the prettiest, most beautiful past, but you're using that as a testimony to inspire. What happened at the age of 6?
Okay, so my mom is a Mother Teresa, I'll tell you that.
All of our mothers, I love that.
She should take anybody to look after them, take them to school, family mostly. So one of the family members was a bit grown, and I was born just after the war, and people during the the war were not going to school. So after the war, then people were then going back to school, and they were more older than the normal. So my mother took one of the relatives in, and it was out of goodwill, and he was going to school, but I'm sure he was older and he had bad intentions. And yes, he did. The first time it happened, nobody knew about it, only I did. Can I tell you that anybody who's raped out there can tell you that once you're raped, it doesn't matter how long it's taken, you're going to remember the smell, you're going to remember the first tear, you're going to remember how emotional it was, you're going to remember the fear, not just being scared of him, but scared of everybody that you meet and come across, like, how am I even going to say this, you know? And I had 3 older brothers. Well, I've got 3 older brothers. And my older brothers were very protective over me, but I didn't tell them until a while. Now my other brother's like, no, you need to tell mom. So it took like a year, but about 6 months to, I mean, I was still young, but I remember it was a long time for me to be able to say to my mom, of which it happened accidentally. And we were walking from school, and we saw some gentlemen bathing. We stayed in a village. So they were bathing by the river. Yes. Then mom says, no, don't look. And
cover your eyes. You can't see the boy parts.
Yeah. And I said, but mom, I see this all the time. And that was like a heartbreaking moment for my parents. But can I say that I want to change this, and I'm sure a lot of people who've experienced these ordeals want to change that. My parents dealt with it the way they felt was best at that time. However, there was no counseling. There was nobody who spoke to me after that.
No professional intervention.
No professional intervention. My mom took me to an older aunt who also looked at me and tried to help, but there was no professional help. Only when I got to university, the dean of university allowed us to speak to psychologists. And that's when I said, listen, I've got this thing that I'm carrying, and I've been carrying it for years, and I don't want to carry it anymore. And that's when the journey started.
To healing.
Yeah.
And I think healing from such a trauma is a lifelong journey. But I definitely do commend you for being brave enough to share your story, because I'm sure there's so many young girls and boys out there that are listening and watching, and they're just taking so much strength from you.
Precisely.
You also are deciding to champion the cause of taking women from politics to business, corporate, bringing them up and saying, hey, you deserve to be in these managerial positions. Yes. You deserve to be CEOs like Judy. Yes. You deserve to kind of break the boundary when it comes to male-dominated spaces and own it.
You know, I'm going to give a few points to you, and because you're a young woman,
yes,
and many other young women.
Yes.
First of all, if you have got any ordeals that you've dealt with in your life, face them. Secondly, you got to come to a point where you find healing within. Thirdly, you got to come to a point where you understand that you need peace. After you get peace, you need to start empowering yourself before you start getting empowerment from anybody else. Once you empower yourself, I must say this, yes, you need financial empowerment. And you got to start something. You got to be in a position where you are not scared to start. That is my first thing. Secondly, I'd like to say that as a woman, and I have experienced what I've experienced, ordeals, and I've gone through a lot of things that I've gone through. But can I say that I know why I went through them? I went through them because there's a younger girl who needs to know what happens and how to deal with it. If I don't go through it, I can never tell them.
Yes.
I can never share it with them. So we're going forward, we're suffering, so that we tell and we help the girl that comes after me. And if I'm the one who's going to stand and say, listen, Zimbabwe, I am going to be your first female president.
Yes.
Another young girl will be able to see that and say, no, even if I've gone through a lot of stuff, I'm doing this.
You deserve it all.
Yes.
You do deserve it all. Thank you so much. So we have been asking on our social media if they've got any questions for you, VIMBAISHE. Okay. And we've got a first question here asking, how did you deal with the rape and what kept you going and moving forward?
First of all, like I mentioned earlier on, that I did keep quiet for a while because of fear. Eventually, we got to speak about it, and I spoke to my parents. But can I give you an answer to that? I've got an older brother who I come after, who we lived with. My brother was the most supportive guy in my life, and I think he still is. He literally was so protective. if a guy tried talking to me because he knew what had happened to me in the past, he tried to show me that there is no man, there is no guy who can come and control my life. And until today, he's the guy who says, listen, you can do it. You may be the girl and men are there, but you're stronger.
Oh, thank you so much for your question, Azaria. We really do appreciate it and answered so beautifully. We've got a question here from Apula, and they're asking, what gives you strength? Because hard to deal with that kind of a situation.
Apula, right?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Apula. Thank you for that. I'll tell you something. I've got 2 children, Lynette and Jaden. They are the most amazing things in my life, and they give me strength. So every time I come to a point where I'm a bit disheartened, they give me strength. However, let me tell you something. There's millions of young women out there that need me to have strength. And if I don't have strength, then they're going to fall. So they give me strength as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your story so passionately, so fearlessly and courageously. We're definitely all taking notes. And girl, all the best. I will see you when you are president. Please, may I have a bed in your presidential home? After the break, we continue our conversation with our truly inspirational guests. Do not move a muscle.